Hold on here a second, y'all. Having a little bit of technical difficulties. Hang on, hang on.
I was going to say, I think it's that it wasn't great. I have a share my voice not only abroad, but also after I write. That's one of the things that as writers that we need to cherish. There's times when it's good, and sometimes it's tough. Well, sometimes on one hand, I see another world, and it's like saying, I was Yeah, I was gonna say this, I think this is the really fast great thing, so to have a right edge.
Okay, so I am, oh my God, having some issues here, and I haven't been able to figure out. I don't know what happened to the sound. That makes no sense to me. So I am trying something a tad bit different. Okay, so I see mad comments coming in. I'm having some issues here. I haven't been able to figure out. I don't know what happened to the sound. That makes no sense to me. So I am trying something. So yeah, I'm trying something a little bit different here. So in the meantime, I'll tell you a little bit about this interview and how it got started. I interviewed with Valerie Miner. She is author, writer. She's published 15 works, and this newest work is titled Bread and Salt. I was a student of Professor Miner my first year of the MFA program at UAA in creative writing. And I'm just like honored. She asked me to do this production here and stuff. And we did this wonderful interview, and I'm just having difficulties making sure the sound is connected. And I don't know why. I practice this stuff time and time again, and this doesn't seem to be working the way I practice it to be. And so I'm trying another route right now. So if you can bear with me, I'm gonna see if I can play some videos or something in the meantime. Let's see how this goes.
Magnetism is a life substance, a living spirit. It has its own particular science. The more one knows of this science, the more one will be able to value it, maintain it, and utilize it to the best purpose. By being conscious of one's magnetism, one develops it. The spiritual quality of magnetism is the most valuable power there is, for it is the magnetism of one's heart and soul. Magnetism is developed by its use and controlled by one's reserve. One must know the right balance between how to develop it and how to preserve it. The power with which one progresses on the spiritual path is dependent on the power of magnetism.
All right, well, that was shorter than I thought. Oh my God. I don't know how I'm gonna pull this off. I got to really get this thing together, get this audio happening. Yeah, you can hear me now. Yeah, definitely gotta love technology. Definitely gotta love technology. Here, well, here's another video.
Oh, when the poets go signing in, with spoken word artists hope to win. Oh, I want to be in that number, to still their snaps, claps, rock them a thunder. Oh, when the poets go signing in, Magnetic won't let them win. Yes, I want to see that number of all the trophies and cash I plundered.
All right, well, sorry, it's got to be MoHagani music video hour until we get this done. I got one more trick up here in my sleeve. I'm gonna try to pull this off. If not, I'm just gonna have to cancel and reschedule this for another time. Oh my gosh. Woe is me, woe is me. Okay, here's another one.
I must try. May awake your conscience.
MC Magnetic, to let you know I needed fresh clothes, so I changed my flow. I'm a rapper with no crowd, but still on a mic, cooped up in the house. Another Friday night, bored AF to watch everything on Netflix. Rising case numbers? That's some bullish. I'm paranoid and mad as hell. Beauty salon closed, so I did my own nails to stay home and be flashy. Souped up in my living room, stylish and classy. Go hard. 38 bars on webcam to warn ya, cause there ain't no love in a time of corona.
You ruined so many families. And now,
Envoy. Choose life or death.
All right, okay. I think this is working. There's a lot of comments filling, but I can't hear you. What's going on? Oh, it was a challenge to find a video. Now there's no sound. I know, no sound. Oh my gosh, please. Yeah, I don't understand why this thing did not do the sound. I've tried this, I've done this several times, and I don't know why the sound is not where it's supposed to be. Oh my goodness. Okay. We're gonna breathe. Bear with me. I got this one more thing I'm gonna try. Let's see if we can do this. If this will work in the meantime. There's something going on with the screen share part of things. Let's see.
The times you tried to reconnect with Brad, you're still worried about his doping. He ignored your calls and emails. Your partner, he persists. Clearly, he didn't register the banter with Milt. Enough. My personal life isn't an appropriate topic for a student. I wish you well, he threatened. Brad is too proud to have sent him. Arthur has come of his own accord. Imagine the whole family still being angry with you. But is it your fault that Brad has become a recluse, that for years he smoked too much dope to hold down a job? Obviously, divorce was a good move for several reasons. And I see from your posters you're still into radical politics. That hasn't changed. Clara usually comes to empty the waste cans by now. Why is she late tonight? The sky is already plum colored. If you worked in a bank, you'd have a discreet button to push. Look, Arthur, it's late. Is there some way I can help you? The little towhead ate all the wedding cake left on people's plates. He stared at Brad with he stared at Brad with gigantic, admiring eyes. His uncle, the handsome, gallant groom. Since Artie's dad died, Brad had become.
Right. Good evening. This is MC MoHagani Magnetek. I'm here with Valerie Miner, author of Bread and Salt, and I'm so excited and elated to be doing this interview. Valerie Miner was my first year mentor in the creative writing program and literary arts program at the University of Alaska Anchorage, which was like about 3 years ago now. And here we are today. I'm almost about to be graduating, and just proud that as a mentee that I can help her promote this book. And we're gonna get into it, and we're gonna start off with a reading. But before we do that, Valerie, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a writer, and I write a lot about a number of different places. Location is very important to me. This particular book is set in Tunisia, India, Turkey, France, Italy, number of places in the U.S. I was brought up in a family where my father was in the Merchant Marine and my mother was an immigrant at the age of 20. So I think traveling is just in my blood, and it's certainly in my stories.
All right. Well, that's a nice introduction. So we won't, I don't waste any time. Let's get into this reading. So people, just sit back and enjoy this wonderful reading, an excerpt from Bread.
before you get brain cancer. Cheer up. Low blood sugar always brings out your gloomy. Come on, only 2 more midterms to read and you can leave the office behind. A knock on the open door. Your heart sinks and inadvertently you check your watch. The handsome blonde student shifts from one purple Nike to another. His flush-faced tells you he has run here. Sweat drips along his left cheek. His right hand is fisted. Tension hardens his blue eyes. Hello there, you say, throat clearing, and then, are you Masha Dunway? Yes, they never address women as professor. At least he didn't call you by your first name, as so many students do. How can I help you? Shuffling into the office. Pay attention, you were up late last night obsessing about mom's accelerating Alzheimer's. You may be tired, but your office door is open. You are a professor. He is a student. This is your job. Closely, he inspects the walls. It's almost comical, as if he's casing the joint. A fairly straight kid, he looks more Ivy than Berkeley. You don't recognize me, he says, deadpan, bold. You troll through a mental album of former students. There is something familiar about the kid, but you can't quite place him. Another knock. Your favorite colleague Milt pops his head in the office. Finished at salt mine for the day. Don't stay too late. Again. Yes, Uncle Milt, you laugh. He looks over at the student who is staring at you and slips.
Right. Good evening. This is MC MoHagani Magnetek. I'm here with Valerie Miner, author of Bread and Salt, and I'm so excited and elated to be doing this interview. Valerie Miner was my first year mentor in the creative writing program and literary arts program at the University of Alaska Anchorage, which was like about 3 years ago now. And here we are today. I'm almost about to be graduating, and just proud that as a mentee that I can help her promote this book. And we're going to get into it, and we're going to start off with a reading. But before we do that, Valerie, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a writer, and I write a lot about a number of different places. Location is very important to me. This particular book is set in Tunisia, India, Turkey, France, Italy, number of places in the U.S. I was brought up in a family where my father was in the Merchant Marine and my mother was an immigrant at the age of 20. So I think traveling is just in my blood, and it's certainly in my stories.
All right. Well, that's a nice introduction. So we won't, I don't waste any time. Let's get into this reading. So people, just sit back and enjoy this wonderful reading. An excerpt from Bread and Salt by Valerie Miner.
This story is called Escape Artist, and it's This story is called Escape Artist, and it's actually set in Berkeley, California. You glance out the window at the tranquil spring evening, 3 stories down to the glorious almond blossoms and purple magnolias dazzling the campus after long, dreary rains. Northern California heaven. It's been a productive but long day of teaching, running meetings. You're tired, hungry for supper, a little cranky. Damn fluorescent light buzzes above your desk. Shots of toxin straight to the cortex. How long before you get brain cancer? Cheer up. Low blood sugar always brings out your gloomy. Come on, only 2 more midterms to read and you can leave the office behind. A knock on the open door. Your heart sinks and inadvertently you check your watch. The handsome blonde student shifts from one purple Nike to another. His flush-faced tells you he has run here. Sweat drips along his left cheek. His right hand is fisted. Tension hardens his blue eyes. Hello there, you say, throat clearing, and then, are you Masha Dunway? Yes, they never address women as professor. At least he didn't call you by your first name, as so many students do. How can I help you? Shuffling into the office, he perches on the gray chair watchfully as if training for the FBI. Some kids automatically pull their seats right up to the desk, lean over, elbows on your papers. Others stretch back, expectant customers. The shy ones usually alight on the edge like this. How may I help you? He blinks, snaps his gum. Running with gum in his mouth, suddenly you're worried for him. He studies you. Pay attention. You were up late last night obsessing about mom's accelerating Alzheimer. You may be tired, but your office door is open. You are a professor. He is a student. This is your job. Closely, he inspects the walls. It's almost comical, as if he's casing the joint. A fairly straight kid, he looks more Ivy than Berkeley. You don't recognize me, he says, deadpan, bold. You troll through a mental album of former students. There is something familiar about the kid, but you can't quite place him. Another knock. Your favorite colleague Milt pops his head in the office. Finished at salt mine for the day. Don't stay too late. Again. Yes, Uncle Milt, you laugh. He looks over at the student who is staring at you and slits a thumb across his throat, subtly advising you to send the kid away. You shake your head. Have a good evening, Milt. Seriously, Marcia, at the department party, Dana made me promise to kick you out of the office before dark. Duly warned, you note, hoping the student will pick up on the lateness of the hour. And Dana's right, it's not safe. Good night, Professor Weinstein. Say hello to Eva for me. You turn back to the visitor. Sorry, I can't remember. Tell me your name. He glares, exhales through pursed lips, almost whistling. An image from the morning paper, that young sniper in Cincinnati, from a Wiccan cult. Weird. Pagan environmentalists, right? Something benign. He continues to watch you, eyes full of, yes, longing. I know we've met, you try. His jaw stiffens. Your patience is dwindling. It's been a while, he offers, as if playing a creepy game. That's it. You're exhausted. You flip through a file on your chaotic desk, hoping he'll get the point. Dana will have dinner ready, and Milt's right about the dangers of cycling along College Avenue after dark. Suddenly he mumbles, You used to be my aunt. A harder edge to his voice now. Puzzled, you study his petulant face. And then, Artie, Roberta's son, how are you? He was an affectionate little boy, very attached to Brad, adored his uncle. He looks exactly like your ex-husband's sister. You count the years, 12, 13, since you've seen little Artie, who, through the miracle of life, is now a young man. Arthur, he corrects you solemnly. Arthur, you nod to the once delighted child who was a demon at checkers. I'm fine, he looks you coldly in the eye. How are you? Fine, thank you. You're still smiling despite his curtness. The dutiful aunt, you ask, so you're a student here at Berkeley? Yes. Just like his uncle in the passive aggression and the monosyllables. You had to pry conversation out of Brad, too, especially after he became a total pothead. For years, you begged him to agree to couples counseling. Every night, he came home from work and went straight upstairs with his stash to watch TV and eat junk food and giggle. You think about the shock on his face when you finally told him you needed a separation. It's not working for whom? He asked. What year are you, Artie? You hear that old, reasonable tone you used with Brad in the last years. Are you a junior? Sophomore, of course. His voice is almost inaudible again. As you remember, I'm 19 now. Outside, the sky is graying. Nearby buildings are losing shape. This is not a student consultation, more like a family stealth attack. As you know, as if you'd remember his birthday, as if Roberta hadn't cut you off when you tried to maintain contact, even sending back Christmas cards. In those days, you still cared about Brad, worried about him, still thought Roberta was your friend. Well, after years of therapy, you're a little more realistic about people. How do you like university so far, you ask? You are not obliged to keep chatting, but you're surprised to find you feel a tie to Brad and his nephew, nostalgic for what might have been. Fine, he's reading a student exam upside down. Slowly shove the tests into a briefcase and check your watch again. You can't help asking one more question. What's your major, Artie? Arthur, he corrects you. Chemistry. Just like your Uncle Brad and his uncle before him, of course he'd follow his hero to Berkeley, to chemistry. Glad you actually remember the family, he smirks. That's it. The filling station is closed. Nice to see you again, Arthur. I really do need to close up now. You cut your hair. Reflexively, you touch a short, tight coil at the nape of your neck. We used to call you Aunt Rapunzel. You'd laugh. Brad always loved your long curls, claimed he rescued you from your crazy family. In a way, he was right. Brad's love and support allowed you to become an escape artist, disappearing through the haze of smoke and alcohol and out the door of your family's tiny 10th floor apartment in the projects. Yes, you've always been grateful to him, even if he didn't turn out to be such a prince. You weren't a total princess. Of course, you returned to your family after finding your footing. These last 2 years, your sister Anna has been good about sharing the caretaking of Mom. Sometimes you and Anna even laugh about growing up in that chaotic, scary environment. You still live it with that Dana person? What is the story? Did Brad send him? The times you tried to reconnect with Brad, you're still worried about his doping. He ignored your calls and emails. Your partner, he persists. Clearly, he didn't register the banter with Milt. Enough. My personal life isn't an appropriate topic for a student. I wish you well here. Are you still a feminist? Yes, of course. Mom knew it. She spotted it early. Knew what? This kid is full of odd energy. You are tired and hungry. It's ridiculous to feel threatened. Brad is too proud to have sent him. Arthur has come of his own accord. Imagine the whole family still being angry with you. But is it your fault that Brad has become a recluse, that for years he smoked too much dope to hold down a job? Obviously, divorce was a good move for several reasons. And I see from your posters you're still into radical politics. That hasn't changed. Clara usually comes to empty the waste cans by now. Why is she late tonight? The sky is already plum-colored. If you worked in a bank, you'd have a discreet button to push. Look, Arthur, it's late. Is there some way I can help you? The little towhead ate all the wedding cake left on people's plates. He stared at Brad with he stared at Brad with gigantic, admiring eyes. His uncle, the handsome, gallant groom. Since Artie's dad died, Brad had become both father and uncle. You think about the time you raced Artie to the hospital 2 years after the wedding when he got anaphylactic shock from a bee sting. No, he says in that flat voice. I just came to see the person who used to be my aunt, out of curiosity. Let it go, Dana would tell you. Breathe. But the cordial aunt intervenes. Drop by again if I can be of any help. He looks at you vacantly. You stand. Slowly, he rises, then leans back against the faith-ringled print, hands in his pocket, sweaty head on the last syllable of her name. Of course, it's preposterous to think he'd pack a gun. Still, he could have a knife. You are losing your grip. Stop it. You tried with Brad. You really did. Where the hell is Clara? His eyes lower. Goodbye, then. He sounds downcast. Goodbye, Arthur. Thanks. Pardon? For saying goodbye. I always did wonder where you went. He turns, walks toward the door, then swivels, waving once. You see the 6-year-old kid clapping when you and Brad picked him up at the hospital. He hugged Brad as if he would never let go. As Brad drove to Roberta's, you cuddled Artie in the front seat, inhaling the antiseptic and sweat, grateful he was safe. You waved back, wistful for the people you and Brad and Arthur used to be. Standing at the door now, you watch him walk away. It never occurred to you that Artie remembered you. After Roberta cut you off, Brad ignored the calls and emails you tried to detach. Now you feel both guilt and sadness for one more loss in Artie's life and yours. He's strolling down the corridor in a deliberately schlumpy gait that reminds you of his uncle, who used to be your husband. What a relief to have the current version of your life restored. Soon you'll be telling everything to Dana over supper in your sweet rented bungalow, far from the horrible high rise of your childhood and petulant men posing as princes. You stand in the hall until you hear the reassuring sounds around the corner. The elevator door yawning open and then finally shut. Imagine waiting 13 years to say goodbye. Returning to the office, you close the door behind you, press the lock before sitting down. As you gather your papers, you feel lucky. Lucky for 10 years and still going with Dana. Lucky to have a job you love. Lucky for California's no-fault divorce laws. No fault. A tap on the door. You hold your breath. Banging now. You feel the vibrations. Watch the wooden door shake. Persistent, heavy, thumping. You look out the window into the darkness, 3 stories down to the dimly lit sidewalk. Breathe. You try to concentrate. Run your hands through your hair. Okay. Grab the phone. Get under the desk. First you call out, hopefully, Clara? But of course, Clara has a key. Thank you. I can't hear you, Mahogany.
There we go. I had to unmute myself. I said I'm really thankful that you read that story. It's one of my favorite works in this book. Yeah, it's a better piece.
Thanks, Mahogany.
Yeah, and I was like, so being the student that I am of Valerie Miner, I was like taking notes, and I remember, oh yes, this is what I highlighted because I really like this line. We used to call you Aunt Rapunzel. You laugh. Brad always loved your long curls, claimed he rescued you from your crazy family. In a way, he was right. Brad's love and support allowed you to become an escape artist, disappearing through the haze of smoke and alcohol out the door of your family's tiny 10th floor apartment in the projects. Yes, you've always been grateful to him, even if he didn't turn out to be such a prince. You weren't a total princess. I like it. And then what's interesting is like Brad, I mean, of course, I guess he didn't start out that way, but over the course of this marriage, he becomes a pothead, so I was like, it's really funny. So I really, really like that. I like how these stories, especially this one, is such a great sense of place. And then, what's the other story I was thinking of too? Were they on the cow train? I had to look at it. Yeah, it was the cow train.
It's called Incident on the Tracks. Yeah,
Incident on the Track. And it was, where is that quote? I mean, it was just this lovely like passage in which like, the people are on the train and they all like in their own spaces and everything. And it really brought me back to living in cities and being in places where you have these subways and these trains. So in this story, it has a great sense of place, no matter where it takes place in the world, whether it's Tunisia, whether it's California, it's just a wonderful, wonderful story. So We have a few questions here, and we're going to put the first one up on the screen. How's that? What inspired you to write this book, Bread and Salt?
Well, you know, when I start a book of stories, I never have a theme. I just, as I was saying earlier, I travel a lot. I've had number of wonderful opportunities to have Fulbrights in different places and to be invited to different countries. And, you know, your notebook is always with you in one way or the other. And so gradually I pulled these stories together over many years. The way that I write is I'll be writing a novel and send it out to colleagues to read. And while they're reading it, I'll write a short story. And eventually I have a book of short stories. And the title story, Bread and Salt, is set partially in Tunisia, and partially in Paris, and partially in Boston. And I was motivated to write this story because of a time I did spend teaching in Tunisia, and it was coincidentally the same year, and actually the same. I ended my teaching on the same day that the Atocha station was blown up in Spain by North African militants, and I wanted to explore what it was like to get to know people in Tunisia, people who were militant activists who believed in violence as a force for social change, but also getting to know people who were activists and homemakers and so forth. And there's a phrase that came up frequently in conversations after I'd have a meal with somebody, and they would say, we've now shared bread and salt. We will always be friends. Or we've now shared bread and salt. We will never be enemies. And I think this is something that happens not only in Islamic cultures, but in other cultures too. So I wanted to, when I looked at all the stories in the book, they were essentially stories of reclamation or reconciliation or reunion or forgiveness, of people coming together with bread and salt. And so I named the book after the novella, and the novella kind of set the theme for the stories.
I like that whole idea of, so much like conversation around food, breaking. And I remember a friend of mine used to call it, we're trying to break bread together, and that was our time to like come together as friends, as family, and discuss and be there in the moment with one another. So I really love that analogy of breaking bread. But the salt part, that's what I wanna know. Because like sometimes to me, like salt is just such a bitter thing, I mean, bread can be sweet, and salt is, salty. There's a lot of sodium involved there. I mean, but that gives this contrast as the tensions that's happening throughout all of these narratives in this work. Is that I was reading some of the reviews that said it's a really quiet work. It's great for quarantine and for the pandemic. Yet there is tension in these stories, in these characters, and just like in the Escape Artist. Here's this woman, this teacher, professor, an old student, not sure what this student wants, this student's intentions are, and then find out that that's the child, her nephew from a former marriage, complicates things, and then that relationship is complicated in itself. I think you kind of like answered to tell a bit about the book. One of the things I like about this particular work and all your works is that the focus or raising awareness to social issues, feminism, women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, people and the struggles, and like this, this worldview that you have, that you bring, and you bring these into character. So with that, let's go to this question. And what did you learn when writing this book?
Oh dear, I learned that it takes a long time to write a book, which I have learned many times, but I learned it once again. Um, uh, I learned that the stories of people, these stories are about people in different parts of the world, and in almost every one of them, there's um, a character who is of European descent. Um, so so there, it's often about an expatriate being in Turkey or being in India or being in Indonesia. Um, and one of the things that I learned is that it's so easy in some ways to make friends with people um, because there's so much people have in common that they really don't know about. And once people start opening up about family or ideas or hopes or failures or sadnesses, uh, you realize things are so universal. And as I said, one of the themes of the book really is salvage, what we can salvage from the difficulties in our lives, and what we can celebrate about the joys in our lives and hold on to. And I found that in my own experience traveling, that it was pretty universal. That those themes are really cross continents and probably cross galaxies. I don't know about the galaxies, but pretty sure.
Across galaxies. Yeah, as you know, I like to write about get into fantasy and deal with altered realities and spaces. And so I'm glad you brought that up. I really, someone asked me this too. I mean, I'm just really starting my writing career, but someone asked me about how long does it take to work on a book. And I was telling them, I said, well, before this program, I thought one draft was enough. And here I am with the Mad Fantastic 2098 about to start the ninth draft. And I'm like, wait a second, I think there's 2 or 3 more drafts after this. But I talked to one of my other friends that used to be a former student in the program, I think Martha Moore. She was like, just finish your project, MoHagani, and graduate. It's like, don't worry about it. Yeah, you got a point. Let me just stop right there because I was like wondering, like, where do you stop writing a novel after you've gone through so many drafts? And that's one aspect of it. But then I also learned too that some narratives, some books take years to write. It's
Yes.
because of the experience that is there and the life that is happening. And clearly in Bread and Salt, there's this life that's going. And the author or the narrator in this particular case is experienced in travel in the world and stuff. So this perspective is there. But those are things that you only get like through living. You know, I have a work, I don't have a real title for it yet, but it's my Big Mama's Gumbo poetry. So my grandmother, she taught me how to make gumbo. So, and she passed away a few years ago. So every time I make a pot of gumbo, I always write a poem with it. Now, mind you, I only make this dish like 2 or 3 times a year. So when I do talk about it, it's like it's a growing body of work and in recognizing that some works do take longer to cultivate and groom, and sometimes it's a matter of just your experience and growth in that. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that the business about rewriting, I find it so helpful to have a writing group and to share my work with other people. So after I write, in fact, I met with my writing group for a couple of hours this morning, and I'm on the 5th draft of a new novel. And they had great ideas about this chapter. You know, on one hand, I didn't want to hear them because I didn't want to do any more work on it. But on the other hand, I was so excited that they saw things that I didn't see. And so one of the things that I feel about writing is that it's a project from beginning to end. I mean, I feel we're all part of a kind of collectivity, imaginative collectivity of writers and readers. And, you know, my stories come from the world in which I live. I hope they reflect the historical moment, geographical place, as you mentioned. But then they get read by people in the process. Often there are about 20 people who read a book over the different drafts. And then they go out to the world. And I've often had the experience of talking to a class, and if there'll be 20 people in the class and me, that means basically there are 21 copies of the book. There are 21 versions of the book, because again, it's a social interaction. What you get from the book and what she gets from the book and what they get from the book is going to be different, and it's fine that it's all different.
Right. Does that factor into, when you're creating a work, or you move into that stage of publication? You've written this work. Are you concerned? Do you think about what the readers take away with it or not? Do you write for readers, or do you write for self?
Well, I definitely have a sense that I'm writing for people, but like I said, I feel that it's part of an imaginative collectivity, and I don't try to define those people. I feel pretty sure that a lot of Trump supporters wouldn't be fans of this book, but I do have one friend who's a Trump supporter who loves this book. So, you can't cut people out. I think that's a really important thing. You can't cut people out.
This is true. This is true. And I think, too, at the same time, as a writer, it takes place to get to a work. I think as a reader, it takes a certain, because we all bring something to that. Like you just saying, there's 21 people in the room, including you. That's 21 versions of that work. And we all bring something to it. When we sit down to read, I'm like, what do I know about bread and salt? I really don't eat bread too much. Try not to do too much salt. I got a extra salty T-shirt on today. That's what I'm bringing to the reading. So whether these people are aligned politically, culturally, or not, maybe not. They're not they're not ready for this work yet, or
right.
Or it's not applicable to their lives at this time.
And I wanted to go back to your question about bread and salt, because I didn't answer it very well. And I think that the whole idea is that bread represents nourishment, so that you won't be a stranger is not hungry, and that salt represents flavor, and adds something to the nourishment. I think that's essentially what the derivation is. And I wanted to say about that idea about the 21 people in the room. It reminds me of the fact that the wonderful Andromeda Romano Locks, who used to teach in the University of Alaska graduate program, has started this group called Authors in Pajamas. If you just look up Authors in Pajamas. And a group of us who are among the authors in pajamas have agreed to visit book clubs virtually, so basically anywhere, who agree to buy our book through bookshop.org, which basically serves the independent bookshops. So if people out there are in book clubs, I'd be happy to visit your book club. Just go to Authors in Pajamas. And actually, I promise not to wear pajamas.
Well, we're quarantined, so technically, a lot of people are going to work now in their pajamas. I've had friends who tell me, you remember, people used to say, "Oh, I had this dream last night that I was at work and I was naked." And I don't know how many times I've heard that, and like now here in quarantine, that the experience a lot of people are having that experience. It's like, well, you're not gonna see me anyway. It's just an audio call, so just show up as I am. But then I've seen some stories where companies actually are making sure people have on clothes to show up for virtual audio meetings. So it's really interesting world we live in at the time. Let's see what else we have. Okay, you answered that question. Oh, literary pilgrimages, right? To me, what that says, what resonates there is that I'm gonna take time as a writer. I'm going to work on this book, or maybe I'm going to write this entire novella or this entire short story in a certain amount of space. I'm gonna journey off to some place to the tallest mountain in Alaska, which would be Denali. Yeah, go to Denali and sit at the foot of Denali and write a book. Or I'm going to do some exploration at Denali to write my book. So how does do you have literary pilgrimages or gone on any yourself?
Well, I think it kind of works in the opposite direction for me, that I go to a place because I've been invited to Finland or to Italy or to China. And after I've been there, um, I think back about the people that I met. And one of the gifts that comes from those experiences is that I start, of course, I do write, but I also read, and I read books by authors from those places. And it's a great education. I think Americans read too much material just written in English. And I wish that I knew more languages, but a lot of this work is translated, and it just expands your uh, consciousness. It expands your range of compassion. It makes you a better writer. It makes you more of a world citizen. On another level, when you say pilgrimage, I think back to when I was in my 20s, and I remember I decided to go to England because this is embarrassing in some ways, but all the literature that I read in college and university was basically English literature. There are occasional Irish literature, most of it by Anglo-Irish people, and 99% of it by men. And I somehow thought that I would absorb something about literature if I lived in London. And I have to say that I did absorb a lot. I had I learned a great deal. I loved living in London and Edinburgh. I co-authored a book with four other writers, a collection of short stories that were published as stories and then published as a book and then translated. And actually, today I found out they've been translated into Turkish. So, that for me, it works kind of the opposite way. That things have an impact on me that I don't go to explore, but then when I'm there, I find these inspirations.
I just had an essay published in Mexico and translated into Spanish, and it's titled "Where's the Love in a Time of Corona?" And I don't speak Spanish. I don't even want to learn. But and I'm like so excited to have a work translated, and I can't read any and understand any of it. And like someone's asking, maybe people ask you questions like, "How do you feel when your works are translated?" Yeah.
Well, I think you're lucky. Spanish is a great language to be translated in because so many people speak it, not only abroad but in the U.S. So it's a great thing. Yeah, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. It's just really exciting. It's really exciting. I think when works translate into other languages, I mean, sometimes maybe I don't know. Maybe meaning gets lost, and more meaning is found. I don't understand how that works for readers in other places, but it's really good. I also like the idea that you brought up in this discussion about literary pilgrimages. You talked about compassion in these journeys. And as a student, I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned from you is to have compassion for myself as a writer. And I still live the funambulist life every day of balance between writing and kung fu, and so that's everything. And it's something that I do share with people often, as have compassion for yourself. And that it helps. It informs the work that we create and stuff, and it's just wonderful. So many lessons. I could go on and on about Valerie Miner. I've been telling my friends all week, I'm interviewing Valerie Miner.
But just to pick up on that, MoHagani, I think that one of the things we have to remember is that we need to have compassion for our characters too. That it doesn't, there's so many, especially emerging writers who want to write an ironic story, and the character turns out to be this sort of skeleton of a person and doesn't have any dimension. And I think we have to love our characters even though they're flawed. And I think our characters have to be flawed if they're going to be human. And they have to be human if they're going to mean anything to people.
So true. So true. Speaking of something else, I think I was reading in terms of characters for this particular book. It's like, how did you come up with these characters in the story? Are they fictional? Are they based on people that you met in your travels?
No, I don't know about other people. I don't tend to write literature that is autobiographical in the sense of memory, but it's more autobiographical in the sense of premonition. And what I mean is that things that I write about often happen to me. An example of this, sometimes it's a slim coincidence, and sometimes it's a really profound experience. And when I was writing A Walking Fire, which is a revision of King Lear from Cordelia's point of view, it's about a father who is dying, and his daughter risks her life to come back and save him. He's politically, they're very different. All of Shakespeare's plays are political. People forget that. And this is set during the Vietnam War, and he's been involved in taking armaments over to Vietnam. Both her brothers are in the military, and she is a war protester, and she, through complicated means, winds up having to escape to Canada, and is, under a shadow of arrest if she comes back to the U.S. But she comes back and she takes care of her father as he dies. And after I finished this book, my father called me up. And he lived in a different state, and he said that he was sick and he didn't know what it was. And then it turned out that what he had was, he wasn't ill before I wrote the book. What he had was the same thing that the character in the book had. He had lung cancer. And I made I talked to him and to his doctor and made plane reservations to go visit him twice. I talked to them about what timing would be good. And he died before I could get there. And I felt that having written the book was such a gift because it gave me a chance to spend time nurturing a father and saying goodbye to a father, even though it wasn't my father and that wasn't me. Cora is not Valerie. So I think that one of the things that we have as writers that we really need to cherish is this ability sometimes to tap into the larger picture that doesn't seem to be so evident. And I don't think it's that writers are more sensitive or that they have extrasensory perception. I think it's that one of the things we have to do in order to be writers is to be quiet and to spend some time thinking and feeling. And so many people with other jobs don't have that opportunity. And we have to give it to ourselves as writers. And so I think sometimes by being quiet, being present, we pick up things that are going to happen.
Mm. It's interesting because you saw the first draft of my novel, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, it's really prophetic Mahogany, like, because there's character, some lady in the mask that I wrote about in 2017, and so here in quarantine, everybody has masks on, so it's like literally like some lady in a mask everywhere you go, and that does something else. And I think the other interesting thing too, that in talking about, bringing this back to the pandemic and the space that we're in now, is I was like, oh, wait a second. No, I don't have the issues that other people are having with not being connected with people. I'm a writer. I like the isolation and the solitude, the quietness of everything. And I really enjoyed those first few weeks of quarantine when there's no cars on the street. Nobody around, go into the grocery store, in and out. It's like, a lot of space. But I've learned that too. I enjoy that quietness, that solitude, and to be able to sit with self. And that is really, really insightful. This is a really insightful discussion in terms of what we bring to the table and the experiences and these premonitions as writers. Though not, I don't even want to say the word supernatural, but they're not like powers. It's just being in tune, and it's also visionary. You creating these visions as well too, bringing them to life. So we have a few more questions. Oh, here's a fun one. As a writer, what would you choose as your mascot, avatar, spirit animal?
Well, I have an imaginary dog because I love dogs and I travel too much. But that's not me. That's just Bob. And Bob is a female dog, and I love Bob, and she's very. For myself, I would have to say that I already, and that is the owl. And I would like to be more like an owl in the sense of sitting and observing and watching and attending and then flying at our cabin up in Mendocino County. After dark, the bats come out, and after the bats come out, the owls come out, and you see these gigantic wings going across the windows. It's so beautiful. And the owl is also a symbol of wisdom, which is something I would also like to have. So I choose the owl not because I think I'm as wise as the owl or as watchful as the owl, but because I would like to be.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I like owls, but I was thinking, wait a second, I'm gonna answer this question for myself. I think mine would be a raven. I really enjoy the ravens. They're some ornery creatures. And they represent tricksters in a lot of Alaska Native folklore and everything. And I love playing with those kind of narratives. I definitely see myself as a raven. And I got a couple of ravens, well, not in this room, but in my other show. Oh, so this question here, I chose to include this because when I was researching, preparing for this interview, I came across, and it's on the whitepointpress.com website, and it's the last question actually. And whoever wrote, and this is from Goodreads, I think, yeah, Goodreads and Library Things Reactions. And this person writes, Valerie Miner's short story collection, Blood and Salt, offers a group of stories, go yada, yada, yada. And this person says blood and salt again, you know? Mind you, I think the review is good, but like, there's a major difference between blood and bread, right? I was like, I don't know if Valerie liked that a lot, you know, and then for it to be here on the website as a part of the formal presentation of this work, I said, well, obviously they felt something about it between her and the publishers, something about this misnomer here of the title still resonated with you. So I wanted to know a little bit more, and that's why I brought this question in, like book reviews. I don't know if this is good or bad, but it's definitely like the wrong word, and the fact that it's intentionally there twice, like no.
Well, first of all, I did not read that. I had no idea it was there. And I don't read book reviews. One reason I don't read book reviews is that I write a lot of book reviews. I've been writing book reviews since the 1970s. And I love writing book reviews, but I know that book reviews are not for the author. They're part of a conversation with other people about the book. And when I first published my first book, which was Blood and Sisters, which is what maybe wasn't that mixed up. Yeah. So my first book was Blood Sisters. Sorry, Blood Sisters. When I published that, I did read the reviews, and I'll tell you, the bad ones just sent me into a tailspin for days. Once I was teaching, and I was late to a class where I had a visitor, and the visitor was at the class, and one of my students had to come and get me and say, Professor Miner, aren't you coming to class? But I was still so wound up with this negative review. And then the good ones, you know, of which there were many, they were never quite good enough, you know. They would say things like the best book of the year, and I'd say, what do you mean? It's the best book of the decade, or something like that. Anyway, what I find is that the most valuable reviews are the reviews that I get, which I've already mentioned, from those readers while I'm writing a book. So in the process of writing a book, as I said, I'll have 20 reviews from people. And like my writers group today, they gave me great ideas about the book. But a book review is no good to me after the book comes out. A book review is really helpful to me when I'm writing the book. And Virginia Woolf had a really interesting idea about this. She said, she thought that reviewers should set up shop in a window and charge money to review somebody's book, and make it a serious exchange. And writer would get to ask questions, would get feedback, and that was that. And essentially, that's what we did in the MFA program, and it's what a lot of good writers' conferences and so forth do for people. But that's different from a book review, which gets published after your book comes out.
Right. I totally understand that. I'm glad you brought up Virginia Woolf. So she's like one of your favorite writers.
Are you asking, is she one of my favorite writers? Actually, this is heretical. As a feminist, I'm not supposed to say this, but no, I don't like Virginia Woolf's modernist fiction very much, but I do love her essays. She has a book called The Moths, which is fabulous. She has a number of essays that are just wonderful. I think she was a great prose writer, but her fiction doesn't move me.
So, okay, digress here for a second. So, but does sometimes does these nonfiction works, do they influence your, or inspire or move your fiction in a certain direction by reading nonfiction? Does that help your fiction?
Well, certainly by, I read about the world, and reading about the world in a newspaper, a magazine or something, can provoke me to think about something, but I don't tend to read. I'd say that reading good nonfiction inspires me to write nonfiction. I wrote a book called The Low Road, a Scottish family memoir about my mother's family. And I was inspired by not by any particular book to write that book. I was inspired by my crazy family to write the book, but I was inspired by the quality of the prose that I'd seen other people create. But I don't think nonfiction affects my fiction very much.
Right. Okay, I understand. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I want to ask this question. Considering this interview is virtually taking place at the Writer's Block Bookstore and Cafe, do you believe in the writer's block? And I ask this, I guess it's metaphorical, because the Writer's Block is a place that we all love here in Anchorage, Alaska, and we come to know it as a very strong literary pillar in our community. And it's just a wonderful place to be, but therefore we, virtually, so we're not actually on Writer's Block right now, but so that's kind of like why it's there. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some of your experience at the Writer's Block Bookstore and Cafe in Anchorage, Alaska, and also your experiences, if any, with Writer's Block.
Okay, well, I love the Writer's Block. I knew Vered before she started it, and I think it's a great institution. It's more than a bookshop. It's a restaurant. It's a gathering place. It's a place where people exchange ideas, who do activism, and I know you do a lot of work there, MoHagani. And I guess that, and I enjoyed the times that I've spent there a lot. When I think about Writer's Block, the store, I think about it in a kind of different way. I think about it as a block, like being home on the block, being in your neighborhood. And I think about it being the block where the writers hang out.
Yeah.
And of course, the other way to think about Writer's Block is this idea of, oh my God, I can't write another word. I had an advisor in graduate school who said, plumbers don't get plumber's block. Electricians don't get electrician's block. Why do we make this writing some kind of rarefied activity? Why don't we just see it as work? And I think the less pretentious we are about writing, the more we see it as a contribution, as something that can open people's ideas, can, as I said, expand their range of compassion, but also for us individually to see it as something that we do on a regular basis that it takes time and energy and diligence. And, I mean, sometimes I don't feel like teaching, but if I don't show up at the class, it's a kind of a disaster. So if I don't show up at the desk, same thing happens with the writing. So there's certainly been periods in my life where I have not felt like writing. The 6 months that I spent, I've been to India many times, but one of the times I was there, it was for 6 months. Whole place. I made a lot of friends, which is why I go back so often. And I, spend a lot of time talking to them, listening to them. And there have been times when I've been depressed, but I have to say that one of the things that helps me when I'm depressed is to say, let's get on with it. Sit at that desk, put the bottom in the chair, and get out the pen or the keyboard. And I would say that there's this kind of way we make too much of this. Sometimes you don't feel like cooking. Sometimes you don't feel like driving the bus. As I said, sometimes you don't feel like teaching, but you do those things because you do those things. You might not be doing them in quite the same way as when you're feeling excited about them, but you do them. Time for it. If I just spend 20 minutes with it, it makes a huge difference. And I guess the last thing I'd say about writer's block is that there's a woman named Victoria Nelson who wrote a wonderful book called Writer's Block. And she has a different idea about this than I do. She thinks that when people are blocked, they're actually kind of brewing things. They're simmering, they're marinating things. And that's another way to look at it. So I recommend her book. I've read it. I think it's a very good book. It's just called Writer's Block by Victoria Nelson.
Yeah, I think so. So I think there's a lot of emphasis placed on writer's block. And I think for me, it goes back to, okay, gosh, this is not working. I can't write. I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the space to write this particular thing. And it's okay. It's okay. Go do something else, And that's what for me, because the writing was like every single day. And I'm so thankful that I never forget the day. It was an epiphany for me to see Funambulist up on the board, on the screen. And it ultimately really did change my perspective of myself as a writer, how I deal and cope with bipolar disorder and mental illness. So it's like balance. So, and there's times now, especially in the past year, where I'm not writing every day, but then I'm like practicing Kung Fu. So it gives me time and to marinate those ideas. And I know too, like, especially in dealing with depression, that's all you're doing is like laying there. So those thoughts are just ruminating and like soaking up and becoming like really, really good things to write about when you have the energy to start writing again. But then it's also that work part, sit down and do the work.
Yeah. I think we ought to explain to people this reference that you keep making to funambulist. A funambulist is a tightrope walker, and Pierre Petit, who walked between the World Trade Center buildings when they existed, was a funambulist. And a few years ago, I gave a lecture at the university about being a literary funambulist. In other words, developing ways to have a balanced life as a writer. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, the best lecture to date. Yeah, it really is. And it's like one of the things that my mom is a school teacher, and I've been, this is my first actually semester, teaching students in 2 different programs myself. And so to talk to her about what it is to teach and having that balance and everything, it's like these lessons that I've learned from you and from my mom, I know what a good teacher is when I come across one. And that's why, like, I'm just like was really excited to like work with you, these past few years. And I chose you as my mentor Because when I was looking at the list of all the people in the program, I said, who has the most books? And it wasn't that I was like concerned about who has written the most books, but the formula for writing the most books is what I wanted to know. Like, how do you do that consistently and get those works out there over time? And now to know, like, oh, well, yeah, there's no short road, so there's no cutting corners into producing work, because sometimes they do take a long time. But yet, over a span of time, now this is your 15th book. You know, that's just a wonderful thing. And a lot of writers, maybe one book here, they never get that book published. You know, that they've been working on for so long.
Well, I was thinking, Mahogany, as you were talking about one of the questions that you sent me earlier about who my inspirations were. And, there are various writers I like individual books by writers. I don't tend to say, this is my ideal of a writer or my favorite writer. But I have to say, also, I've learned a lot from my students, so much from my students. The risks that they take, the new ideas that they have. And sometimes it'll be something as simple as I'm writing a revised page of a novel, and I do something and I say, no, Valerie, you can't do that. You just told your students they can't do that. That doesn't make sense. That's not graceful, or whatever it is. But just through the enthusiasm of students and the pluck of students, I've learned a great deal about writing from my students. So I'd have to say, I don't have one favorite author, but my favorite authors are my students.
Well, we're here. We got like a minute to go. I appreciate this opportunity and this conversation. This is really good on a October night.
Yeah, lovely to see the trees color changing.
Yes. Is there anything else that you would like to say?
Well, I'm just so pleased to be back in Alaska, and I wish I were really there, and hope to come back next summer for the residency. I love Alaska. I've loved the program. It's been always great working with you, Mahogany, and it's very gracious of you to invite me to do this. Thank you so much, and thank you to the Writer's Block.
All right. Yes, thank you, Writer's Block Bookstore and Cafe. This interview has been a part of Alaska Book Week 2020. So we're just really excited to be a part of this wonderful experience that we have each year in Alaska, where we uplift our writers and our authors and the books that we create and produce. So we would like to thank Valerie Miner for stepping into this evening, this beautiful October night, and telling us about bread and salt and what inspired and pilgrimages and her process and journey. It's been a great opportunity, a great time with you. And I just want to say thank you once again. And you have any final words?
Thank you.
You're welcome. That concludes our interview and broadcast. Okay. Oh my goodness. Give thanks. That is over. In the meantime, I freshen up myself and everything for you all. And let me see if I have any comments, questions. Because quite a bit of frustration there. And let's see, audio. It was a challenge. Great hair. So let's see. Join, please ask questions. Thank you, Valerie. We love the both of you. Yes, so this is definitely it's been a wonderful interview. Let me not get caught up into the technical difficulties I was experiencing later. Why that happened, I don't know. But hey, it's a learning curve, and we're doing this. We're in virtual reality mode, and it has its hang-ups, and that's just what it's gonna be like from time to time. And yes, thank you, Sarah, so much. I appreciate it. Me hosting in the video tech. Oh my gosh. And my classmates. I wonder, thank you so much. My classmates, Valerie and Jen, are both in the creative writing program with me. And we've all enjoyed working with Valerie Miner and I'm listening to her lectures and gaining from her experience, her wealth of and her knowledge. Yes, and what else we have here? Oh, we got thank you from Vered over at the Writer's Block. As mentioned earlier in the segment, um, Valerie Miner knew Vered while she was a student in MFA program, and then went on to be one of the founders and owners of the Writer's Block Bookstore and Cafe here in Anchorage, Alaska. So we're definitely pleased about that. And let's see, wait, we have some. Yay, there we go. We got the little overlays working. So if you have anything, questions to ask of me right now in regards to this interview and stuff, I wouldn't mind answering those. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you for that. Yes. I do have a comment here on my other advice. It says, yes, this is wonderful. The notion of imaginative collectively or our intended audiences is helpful. You're able to engage in topics and what that expands the range of compassion. How do you make the shift of the boundary a stretch rather than a tear? How do you keep the audience long enough to have a change of heart view rather than scare them? I know, right? That is definitely a challenge I have as a writer sometimes. Like, how do you keep the audience, the readers involved, and you know, you don't want to scare them off, or you create these characters that are like you know, like two-dimensional or very flat characters and everything. And that's work. That's work. That's work that I'm learning as I go on as a writer, as an myself, and learning this skill, this craft. But yes, this has been a wonderful evening. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you all for your patience with me on this. And we're going to be back tomorrow night. Always gives the best, yes. Yeah, she does. Valerie gives the best like lessons on writing, and throughout the 3 years of the program, I enjoyed the way she demands the space for the students when it's time to go in to do workshops. Everything was like, no, you know, audio devices, no devices, you know, just bring out your pen and paper. We're gonna get back to some old school learning and everything. So, but this event in itself has been a part of Alaska Book Week that's going on. I think we still got till the 12th today, you know, so it's like 4 more days of Alaska Book Week. And we are proud to be a part of this year. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. God willing, without so much technical difficulties and definitely a better voice on my part, though. But yes, this has been just absolutely wonderful. She was an incredible advisor last year, Sarah Rose says. So, yes, once again, thank you all. Thank you, Writer's Block Bookstore and Cafe in Anchorage, Alaska, for hosting this event. Thank you, Alaska Book Week. Thank you very much, Valerie Miner, for giving me this opportunity to interview you and create this production here. And yeah, oh, we have one more. Oh my goodness, we got quite a few of my classmates and students of Valerie here throwing in some comments here in the last seconds here. Her wisdom about compassion for the characters is something I will hold in my mind for sure. So true, so true. And I would say real story. I think it was in my second year, I became very dismayed about some other things that's going on in the world. Like, I just wanted to ship compassion from everyone, including the readers. But then as I went on and writing that next draft of stories, I realized that, yeah, even bad characters, flawed characters, we all need redemption. And that is something that's in all of us inherent. And nothing can be, or no one can be judged until they're complete. So it is important that we develop characters that go through a change, but yet we have some compassion for those characters. And in having compassion for characters, we can have some compassion for readers. Yes, I changed clothes. I changed clothes. Yes, I had to change clothes because I wasn't planning on being on the screen tonight. I'm just gonna play this or whatever and be off. But then I'm gonna turn into a hot mess. So I was like, okay, let me spruce it up real quick while I got some time and get me together. But yes, so Thank you all. It's been a wonderful evening. Hopefully, I can go back and edit the beginning of this thing, and so it will look really nice up on the screen in the days to come. But until then, I wish you all the best. Um, yes, I wish you all the best. Peace, love, and collard greens. I know because we like collard greens. So, yeah, have a good night. Toodles.